Today we are going to discuss with you on how to sharpen tools. There will be a time where you are using a tool and it becomes dull. Now if it does not cut, you're going to have to sharpen them. And we sometimes sharpen planer blades and sometimes we sharpen chisels in class. Now before you even understand about sharpening, you have to understand that, remember, this thing is a piece of iron, and iron actually has to be worn away, and we want a nice bevel edge so that we can make a cut. And the way we do it is by using what we use, or what you call, I guess, an abrasive system. Now, there are a number of different abrasives that you can use, which is, something like sandpaper or something like that. That's a very easy way. But we actually use the real stones, the rocks of the abrasive itself. So this one here, as you can see, is a natural stone that we actually polish our tools on to make it really sharp. But before we can start with that, we have to explain to you, first of all, what these stones are and how we get the different types of grits or the types of numbers that you see. Now, first of all, whenever you have an abrasive, all right, they are labeled in terms of a grit size. Now, grit is how thick or how hard that material is. And sometimes, when the rock is really coarse or really rough, they actually name it with a number. And usually, whenever you start with a grit size, the lower the number, the rougher it is. So a 60 grit is really rough. It's like a big chunk of rock. And as you go up, we're going to go up, but here's my number going down. As the number goes down, so like an 80 is a little bit finer, a 100 is even smoother, a 120, 150. By the time you get to 220, it's really smooth. And we actually go up to 600, and they go all the way up to 16,000, which is really super fine. Now, in our sharpening system, we don't need all these numbers. We only need a certain number of them. And we start with basically 100 grit, then we go to a 320 to 600, 1200, and then the last thing is 8,000 grit, which makes it really super smooth. Now, you're going to find that we do have a number of different materials in terms of grits that we use, and how we use them is very important. You can actually use sandpaper. Sandpaper works really well, but sandpaper wears away too quickly. So we actually need the rock itself or the stone. And we tend to use, in my shop, traditional Japanese water stones. Now, in my shop, I use natural stones that are made in Japan. These are called Japanese water stones. And Japanese water stones are really super fine. They are durable. In fact, they last for years. I've had one of these stones for over 20 years. And this one here is an 800 grit. Now that means that it is somewhere in this category right here somewhere. So that is one stone that you're going to need for your sharpening. You're going to find that this actually needs water to lubricate it, and this way where it washes away the metal, so it doesn't actually embed itself into the stone and get clogged. So this has to go into a pond of water that you'll see later on, and it goes inside of it, and it has to soak so that it actually makes it more porous. And this one here is an 800 stone. Now, you can go all the way up to this one here. This one is a 6,000 grit stone. And a 6,000 grit stone is really super fine. And this one here will polish your metal to a high, shiny, glossy finish, which will look like a razor later on, which I'll show you. Now, these are natural stones, which means that this is a rock from the earth. Okay, that's why they're natural. Now, in the second category of stones, you could actually buy diamond stones, because these, after a while, they're going to wear out, okay, eventually. But you go to buy what we call diamond stones, and these are diamond plate stones. Now, these are quite expensive. Not saying that these are not expensive, because you could actually spend somewhere around maybe $100 for each rock, or spend one rock like this one for less than $300. So it is very expensive, but it will be almost a lifetime of use. Now, you can go to the traditional way that most people do, and they buy what we call diamond plates or diamond stones. This one is actually a diamond stone, and it wears away really, really hard, and it will last you a lifetime. But this one is almost a 300 grit stone, okay? And then you could actually buy these kinds of stones here. This is a little different. This is a combination stone, a 325 or a 600. So this has a dual side type of stone, all right? And these are called Die Sharp, which are a really, really nice company to use. Now, I have different ones for you to look at, which I'll have here. And then you have another one, which is 1200. This is a 1200 stone, and it's double-sided, so probably the back is about 800. Okay, so there you have the different types of stones, and I'm going to show you them in just a minute, so you'll get a nice preview. Here is the 300 stone. You have a 600. You have a 1200 diamond stone. Here is your natural stones. The red one here is an 800 grit, while this one here is a 6,000 grit. And they all have to be placed in a water pond, just like this. So you take it and you put it into the water, soak it for about maybe 5-10 minutes, and then you take it out, and then you can use them, making them very porous. Now, to sharpen something, we need to, first of all, make sure we have to remove all the nicks from the blade itself so that it'll be nice and sharp, because you want to remove all the nicks. So as the blade tends to wear out, it tends to get flat right here on the tip. All right, and then what we need to do is we need to regrind it so that it makes a nice straight bevel all the way across. And the way we do it is by using here a machine. And this machine actually is set with 2 abrasive paper, one on top because it's nice and flat for the bottom, and this one here will give us the 25-degree angle that we need for this one. Now, every tool is a little different. You're going to find that this one, the planer blades and also the chisels, is about 25-degree angle. So the machine is set for 25 degree, and there is a sandpaper on the bottom here, and all we have to do is just slide it right up. And to do that, to show you, make sure you wear safety glasses, and it does spark, because remember, this is really, really pieces of metal that are flying out of it. And what you're going to do is you're going to turn the machine on, okay, and you're going to put your blade here, watch your fingers, and you see the bevel side up, just to show you. So you're going to slide it, all right, and it's going to actually wear away the metal. It's actually sanding the metal away on top, underneath. So you want that 25-degree angle, and that will start to bring it. Now this is a 100 grit sandpaper, so it's kind of rough. Now once you do that, you want to do the bottom because it has a little burr on here. So lay it on top, and now remove the burr because it'll take away the bottom just like that, and you'll start to feel a nice sharp edge all the way across. All right, so now you have to make sure you look at your blade and make sure that there are no nicks on here. If there's a nick on here, you have to go back and do it again, because you want that edge to be super, super flat, bevel. Okay, I'm just trying to show it to you right here. All right, so if I can get the right light. Okay, so I could feel it. It almost comes to a point. Now, really, this is really, really rough. Okay, so 100 grit, remember, is not really, really fine. Now, what we need to do after this is we need to take it to the honing stone, the individual stones, to start to make that finer. Well, after we grind our stone to the correct angle, we are then going to hone it. And when you hone it, you are going to make it thinner, really, really thin. and you're going to start to draw the blade to be a really, really sharp point. And the first thing we're going to use is we're going to actually use the diamond stones, because they actually will cut faster. And when you use a diamond stone, first of all, you have to use a lubricant, and we actually use water. Now, even though it's made out of metal, you still have to use the water as a lubricant. Okay, some they use oil, but water is actually easier to use. So first thing you need to do is you need to, first of all, find your bevel, which is 25 degree. And because I've been doing this for many years, I can get the feel of it. And you're going to make little circles, just like this. Use the whole stone. And you're going to start to wear this down. Okay, what we are then going to do is we're actually making this metal finer and finer. So this here is a 300 stone. So we're going to progressively go up in number. We're going to go from 300, 600, 12, 1,200, and then the last one will be your 8,000 grit. Okay, the water actually will remove it, and all that dark material is the metal. And you're going to start to feel it. You're starting to see it. Now, when we start doing this, you're going to actually curl it. So on the bottom here, you're going to start to feel a little bead. So you take it on the flat side, you go back and forth, and then to remove it. And it starts to feel much sharper. Okay, you can start seeing that the metal is starting to be a little bit finer. So, of course, this is a process. It takes time. When you sharpen a blade, you want it to be super sharp. Okay. Now, some people actually use a honing guide. This is what we call a honing guide. And a honing guide actually is a device that you put your blade in, and then it actually just rolls. I don't use it too much because it really takes a lot of work just to get the right angle. But a lot of people use a honing guide. So they try to find the right angle here. It'll be about 25. It's just about a feel. And then once you lock it in, then they go back and forth just like this. Okay, so you can see how a honing guide would work for this method here. Okay, so this is how a honing guide would be used. But I tend to do it because over the years, you get a nice feel for it. Okay, you can make circles, you can do straight back and forth. People make figure eights, draw a letter 8, backwards, whatever you want to do. So you try to find a method that will work for you. Okay, but I just want this thing to be really, really flat. Now, once you start removing all that metal, your hand's going to start to turn really dark, and that's the really fine iron ore that's coming out of it. Now, we're going to jump from a 325 to a 600. All right, so it's going to be progressively even smoother. So you go with this one, and you don't have to spend as much time as it gets finer. But if you want something super sharp, this is what you have to do. Now, in Japan, when they make the Japanese swords, this is what one person has to do for a whole month. They actually sharpen it just like this, all day, all night, until maybe it's about a month later, and then it'll become sharp. Okay, and then get the bottom. Now remember, don't lift up. If you lift up, it's going to change the bevel. You want the bottom flat. You want this front bevel to be 25 degrees. You want it to be flat down. Okay, point that out. Let's take a look. It's getting much sharper. Okay, and then comes the 1200. You can go flat first, and then go make your little circles. Go straight, whatever method you want. Again, you're drawing the metal out. Okay, and there is your 1200. Now, we have one more to go, and that is going to be our last one. It's going to be our 8000 grit. For the last grit, we use a natural stone. We use a Japanese water stone that we soaked in there for a while. Of course, we could have used a 1200 natural stone, but you can see how really thin this has worn out over years. I've had this for over, I would say over maybe 20 years, okay? So it went from actually this thick to this thin. All right, so the last one you're going to use is this one here. This one here is actually an 8000 grit. Now, an 8000 grit is super fine. It is actually one of those that really will make it highly polished. So first of all, again, make sure it's all wet, and you can see that this is a natural stone, and you can see how it starts to remove all the metal. Okay, and then we do the top bevel. Now you create a little slurry, which will actually polish it even more. Okay, take a look. It's starting to get a little shinier. Try to find the camera here. Okay, now once you polish that, now we are going to make one last thing. It's called a micro bevel, and a micro bevel is actually a very tiny bevel. Here's your 25-degree angle bevel. Now we're going to raise this just a little bit, and we are going to just stroke it 10 times. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, until you get a little burr. Then you're going to rub it right out from the bottom. And now you have a micro burr, micro bevel. Okay. See how it's starting to come out. I'm going to find the camera. See how really shiny that is. And what I do after this is, the last thing is, we are going to stroke it. And we're going to use a wheel that will actually just polish it even more. Now this is a stroping wheel. This here machine is a water stone. It's a water stone with a stroke. And this is a slow moving water stone, which actually is a very, very fine machine, which actually grinds your metal really slow and smooth so it doesn't really burn it. Because if you do burn it, it does get very hot and then becomes very brittle. Now, this machine here, on this side here, we have what we call a piece of leather. It's called a stroke. And the stroke is what actually makes it really, really super sharp, too. Just like when you go to your barber shop and he polishes his razor onto a piece of leather back and forth like that, you know, he polishes back and forth. Same thing, this is what it does. Now, we use a compound. And the compound is actually a grit, and it's a really fine grit, and we actually just rub it right onto it. Okay, and then we do the back because you feel a little burr. Make sure you remove all the compounds, and you can see it really comes to a really high polish finish. Now this is razor sharp. Don't be fooled, because if you put your finger right across it, you will actually cut yourself really, really badly. So you can see how really fine and sharp that looks. Try and get my camera to focus it on here. You can see it, even the shine, you can just shine. It looks like a Japanese blade. Now we're going to test it to show you how sharp it is. And just to prove to you how sharp it is, we have a piece of paper. We have a sheet of paper here, and we are going to show you how sharp this blade really is. that we just sharpened. And if you take the edge and then you're going to just slice the paper, all right, you can see that it just comes apart just like that. It is really super sharp. And if I wanted to, I can just show you, just like that. And with that, you can understand that when we sharpen our tools, this is how sharp it has to be all the time. Now, of course, if you take the tool and you bang it onto the table a few times like this, then it will become dull or flat. And you then have to go back through the process of going back to hone it, to sharpen it. And this way, it will take just as much time to get it back to where it should be. And if you cut with any hand plane or any tool, it will cut like butter. Okay, thanks everybody. We'll see you soon.